This videotape by Jetsunma Akunlamu was recorded live before a public audience. Jetsunma presents traditional Buddhist teachings in a contemporary way. She reaches out to us, longtime Dharma students and newcomers alike.
I designed the teaching for the children in such a way as to be able to help the adults as well. In a very simplistic way, that was the very essence of devotion. You see, the understanding that I tried to give to the children in a very simple way is the same understanding that each one of us should have about the relationship between ourselves and our teachers, and about the hopelessness and kind of alienation we feel on a spiritual level, thinking that Lord Buddha, whom we profess to follow, and Guru Rinpoche, who we also profess to follow, doesn't seem to be physically present. There's a lack of understanding in our minds, and also a lack of pure view that must be accomplished. That accomplishment of pure view, in the case of our teachers, is called the practice of devotion. Devotion is one of the very essential, fundamental teachings that is practiced within our own preliminary practice called ngundro. It is a very extraordinarily important part of the practice. Devotion is generally, our Guru Yoga it is called, in the case of ngundro, is generally the last section of ngundro that we practice. And the reason why it's generally the last section that we practice is that it is quite profound. It seems as though the words are very simple, that we should have devotion, that we should have pure view, that we should think of our teachers as the extension of Lord Buddha's compassion in the world. These seem like very simple thoughts, but they require a certain spaciousness within our own minds and a certain breakage away from our own self-absorbed and limited habitual tendency. Our perception is completely formed by our habitual tendency, you see. And so we have to go through a series of other kinds of practices to even get to the point where we can practice Guru Yoga very effectively. We must take refuge, and we must do so sincerely with great absorption. We must practice bodhicitta, which is the awakening of the compassionate mind, the awakening of the mind of realization, which is consistent with and inseparable from great compassion. We must practice purification. We must practice the gathering together of all of our riches and qualities, past, present, and future, and offering them to the three precious jewels. And in this way, within the context of mandala offering, we are accumulating merit, and that is what that practice is about. We must accumulate vast storehouses of merit in order to accomplish the more profound practices. Then and only then are we truly ready for Guru Yoga. Now, that doesn't mean that we should not try to accomplish and to realize Guru Yoga even at the very earliest stages, but it means that we should expect that our understanding will deepen as we progress along the path. Two of the most very important sections of preparation or preliminary practice are refuge and bodhicitta. Refuge is the practice of, let me try to put it in the most ordinary and common way that we can all relate to. Refuge is like this. Let's say that we just passed adolescence. And you know how you are when you're just past adolescence. You are kind of mindless, kind of not here yet, kind of wild and crazy, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, just not all together. Let's say that we had just passed adolescence, and we are doing what just past adolescence people like to do. We're at a party, and we have the same kind of delight at a party that young people would have. What's the cool thing to do? What's the extraordinary thing to do? What's fun? What gives us a buzz? What gives us a hit? What delights our senses? What draws us and makes us respond automatically, unthinkingly. These are the kinds of things that we do when we're a young adolescent. And this is the kind of thing that we do also on the spiritual path when we first begin. Often when we first approach the spiritual path, not all the inner workings and gizmos are entirely in place. Many people have come into the temple and simply been, for instance, in a totally ordinary reactive mode, but that their reaction, even though it seems ordinary, has somehow brought them to the path. Coming to the temple, they say, wow, look at this. Everything's so exotic. Isn't it true? It's like kind of stepping into maybe Nepal or Tibet. So exotic. Look at all these pictures. Who paints like this? It's amazing. That alone you could look at for a long time. Uh-oh, my Brooklyn Jewish is coming out. Watch out. Then they look at all the statues and they go, where have you seen this before? You don't get to see that. And don't you think it's kind of weird? They have this box with an altar in front of it. What's in there? Nobody knows. So, you know, then they have this food laying out. You know, nobody's eating it. They just keep putting food there, taking it away, putting food, taking it away. What is this? Big rocks everywhere. This place is really exotic. I mean, it's really exotic. And our first kind of thought is almost like, wow, what a cool thing to do, you see. This is just such a cool, this feels really good. It's like, I'm attracted to this. And we have those kind of baby thoughts when we first start the path like, well, if you're going to be spiritual, it's cool to do it in a cool place. Or at least a colorful place. You know, and we think about how cool it's going to be a cool person and what it's going to feel like when someone says to you, what religion are you? And you go, Buddhist. So that's kind of like being at the party. We're adolescents at the party, all dressed up, walking the walk, talking the talk, wearing the clothes, that kind of thing. We're all at this party. And somehow we've managed to land on the path. Well, what has to happen then is we have to practice refuge. Now, refuge in essence is actually kind of like, if you could imagine adolescence is kind of a sleepwalking, which when I think about my adolescence, indeed it was sleepwalking. And I think we're all honest, most of us feel like that. We're kind of here but not here. So we're a little bit sleepwalking, and you can imagine yourself at the party when suddenly you wake up. Practicing refuge is like waking up and the mist clears in a way, and you look around and you see beyond the party. Magically, windows have appeared to you, to the world. Now you can see beyond the party, and you look outside, and what do you see? You see that there are all kinds of different life forms, and that they all seem to be revolving in cyclic existence, birth and death, cause and result, completely linked and actually arising simultaneously. Cause and result, always revolving in this constant cause and result kind of situation. That's what we see when we look outside, and we realize that because of that, most people who aren't even at the party yet, that's even pre-adolescence, most people are simply revolving in cyclic death and rebirth, not knowing what creates birth, what creates death, what creates happiness, what creates sadness, just kind of doing their best in the same way that toddlers kind of would do their best out in the world by themselves, but wouldn't last very long in a safe way, would they? I mean, think about it. How would a child manage in the world? Now, of course, we're speaking in the spiritual sense. We're not saying that you all are idiots and don't know how to catch a taxi. I'm pretty much of an idiot, and even I know how to catch a taxi. But the point of the matter is that while on an ordinary level we seem to be managing, many of us know how to go to school, we know how to work, we know how to support our families, we know how to do those ordinary things. On a spiritual way, in that regard, we don't know how to create the causes that will liberate us from suffering. So let's say that you had suddenly woken up at the party and you looked outside and you saw this horror, that people that you love and respect and know are doing their very best, are trying so hard, are not able to make themselves happy. And you see the suffering. You see hunger. You see poverty. Read the paper. It's all there. Hunger, poverty, sickness, diseases that we can't cure, and more coming every day. So many different kinds of horrible sufferings. Let's say at the party you woke up and you saw that. And then suddenly you looked at yourself and you thought, why am I dressed like this? I look more stupid than I can possibly imagine. This is stupid. And you realize that you put so much effort into this, duding yourself up and getting the right connections and going to the party and getting there in time and having a good time. You realize you spent so much energy on that, and you feel like, almost like, oh, I hate to use this example, but let's say you ate a couple of tablespoons of nice warm mayonnaise. Bleh. It's that kind of cloying feeling in your mouth. Isn't that disgusting? That's how you'd feel. That's how you'd feel. You look at yourself and you kind of look what's going on, and you look at the suffering out there, and you look at the silly amusements, the silly things that hook us, that make us respond, the ridiculous things that make up our particular individual party. And suddenly you feel like you're just sick of it. There's a feeling, once you study the suffering of sentient beings and the horror of cyclic existence, suddenly it becomes like nauseating a little bit, sickening in your mouth. You've been eating it your whole life. It's sickening. You look at yourself go through cycle after cycle of unfulfilling or sometimes negative, bad relationships. And you just wonder when you're going to get the big picture. When are you going to wise up? And it suddenly seems like your own lust and your own neediness are kind of like a little sickening. Maybe not all the way yet, but not so cool. Suddenly you look at yourself and you realize you're kind of like a kid, just wearing clothes that are inappropriate. It reminds me of what little kids do. My daughter's not here, so I can talk about her again. And sometimes she likes to play dress up, you know. She goes into her closet and pulls out everything that doesn't match. And all of the funny clothes that young people, they think they're very dramatic. We took her out for dinner with her friend last night, and what they wanted to wear was a funny-looking skirt and blouse that didn't match, cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and pants underneath it, and it was just a very strange outfit. And at this party, you kind of look like that. You know, we kind of look at ourselves and we go, who put this on me? How did this happen? It's that kind of feeling. So at that point, one needs to build on that first inkling of reality, that first inkling of renunciation. That first inkling is precious. It's like the first taste of pure water in your mouth. Let's say you're a person who for your whole life has had nothing to eat or drink other than, let's say, salt water, sugar water, nasty foods, warm mayonnaise, things like that that just don't feel good in your mouth. And suddenly someone gives you just a bit of the freshest, sweetest, coolest water to drink, mountain water, pure mountain water. How delicious would that be? Cool and sweet in a natural way. Your mouth maybe can't even take it in. You're used to that other stuff and you can't even take it in, but something inside of you says, yes, yes, this is it. When that first inkling comes, that is when we must practice refuge and continue to observe the suffering of sentient beings by practicing the giving rise to the bodhicitta, or great compassion. Now, when we practice refuge, we have to practice refuge over and over again. What are the reasons for practicing refuge, and what is refuge? The reasons for practicing refuge are known if you understood anything about the story that I just told. Those really are the reasons for practicing refuge. You look outside, you see the suffering, You look at the way you're conducting yourself and the way your life is set up and the cause and effect relationships you've got going here, and you realize it's just dumb, fruitless, pointless. There's no future in this. It's a dead end. At that point, the mind turns. That turning is the first step of practicing refuge. What does it turn towards? What does it actually turn towards? Again, you've just looked out the window and you looked at yourself, and the first realization is something like, I don't know what to do now. I don't really know what to do. I know that something's terribly wrong, but I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to leave the party. There's a piece of you that understands you must leave the party. Part of you still wants to be there. Part of you likes to play. Part of you likes to dress up. Part of you likes to be unconscious of the eventuality of your own discomfort, suffering, death, old age, those things, and of the suffering of others. We want to be kind of barefoot and ignorant. Part of us wants that sleep, but another part of us, a stronger part of us, a more certain part of us, understands not enough. It is not enough. I'm hungry. They are hungry. This is stupid. Part of us gets that. That first turning is the first indication, the first movement that is required in practicing refuge. And we have to stay kind of absorbed in that turning. That turning should be practiced every day. These very thoughts, these very leaving the party thoughts, should be practiced every day. That's called turning the mind toward Dharma. Now we have to look for a way out, how to leave the party. The clue is, once again, the first thing we've noticed is the suffering and the trickiness and the seductiveness of samsaric existence, or the cycle of death and rebirth. The cycle of death and rebirth must be addressed. That's where the suffering is. How do we get out of that? We look at the other's suffering, we look at ourselves suffering, we look at how foolish we can be. And we think, what is the method? Aha, that is the answer. We need a method. The answer to that is to look toward those who have actually found the way out of cyclic existence. In other words, if you want to cross an ocean, and we're talking about the ocean of suffering, the ocean of death and rebirth, the ocean of samsaric existence, if you want to cross the ocean of suffering, of course you want to look for a boat. The boat is the method, isn't it? The boat is the method. Well, wouldn't you look for a boat? You're about to cross an ocean. There's no planes. We don't have planes. You want to look for a boat, right? You're not going to try to swim it, are you? See, swimming it is like saying, I'd like to be spiritual, so I'm just going to be spiritual in my own way, and I'll do my own thing because I'm a really cool guy, and I know how to do my own thing. That's like saying, oh, great, I'm going to cross the ocean of suffering. Here I go, dive in. How long do you think you're going to last? A little while, but not very long. Not very long. And the problem with that method is that you often don't even realize when you're drowning. So what we need to do is we need to look for a boat. No, not a boat. We need to look for a ship. In fact, if you're like me, you're practical, and you really want to protect your hide, you do not wish to cross the ocean of suffering in a rowboat, something weak and puny. Neither do you wish to cross the ocean of suffering in a boat that has not been proven seaworthy. Very important fact, really important fact. If I were to cross an ocean, I would want to know that the boat I am in has crossed an ocean many times and is in good repair and is pure, just in the way it was when it was originally capable of crossing an ocean. We want to know that it's made it back and forth. This is proven. We know we can make it. And we want to know, and also if you knew that you were crossing an ocean of suffering with, let's say the engineer of the boat, or let's say the guy that swabs the decks, wouldn't you be a little nervous? I'd be real nervous. I want to cross the ocean of suffering with the most experienced captain, the one who has crossed the ocean of suffering many times successfully and returned for me. That's who I want to cross with. I want the big ship. I want the best ship. I want to know that the captain has crossed. So in this way, we look for the most excellent method that has proven again and again and again to produce enlightenment, to produce realization. Not an imaginary enlightenment or realization, but that one with appropriate signs, the ones that are repeatable, reportable, and visible, such as the signs that our teachers give us at the times of their death, proof of their realization, and even the signs they give us in their activities during the time of their life. Only enlightened mind can produce enlightened, compassionate results. So we look for the most excellent method. We look for that method that has proven to give excellent result every time. That method would be Dharma. Dharma has brought about enlightenment in generation after generation of student and teacher alike. Students have become teachers who have returned to benefit beings, just as I hope you are hoping to do. Now, we not only need that, but we need an excellent captain. And that captain should be considered none other than the Buddha and his emanations in the world. We should look that the Buddha is the one who has successfully crossed the ocean of suffering and has without a doubt achieved enlightenment. Every sign, if you read the life of the Buddha, there is no doubt that he has achieved enlightenment. The result of his life, having brought enlightenment to so many others for 2,500 years, can only have risen from the mind of enlightenment. So we want the proper ship, we want the proper captain, and we also need the proper navigator, because it's considered that while the Buddha is the supreme captain of our ship, it is his spirit, his mind, his nature, which is present in the navigator who does the driving and keeps us afloat, and that is our teachers. So that is the situation that we want to hook up to. That's how to leave the party. Another analogy that we can use, and I love to teach in analogies because it's much easier and simpler for us. We can understand parties. We can understand foolishness. We can understand suffering. We can understand ships and water and the urge not to drown. But sometimes it's hard to understand Dharma. So I like to learn and I like to express in analogies. And one good analogy for understanding our present situation as we embark on the great task of practicing refuge and bodhicitta is that when we look around and we read the paper and we see our own eventual age and death and all the sufferings that come with it, as well as all of the others, we consider that the two of them are unbearable and they are inseparable. I'm suffering, you're suffering, it's all one package. You come to realize that it's like you're in a burning room. You know, the room just burning, 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 burning on fire. And at that point, you look around and you realize that there is one door, one opening, not even a window, one door as an exit from that room, and that door is wide open. How much love and regard will you have for that door, being in that burning room? Well, we're so funny, we're so kind of asleep at the wheel, at least in the first part of our spiritual path, that maybe we don't even have much realization. But when in our own experience the room really begins to get hot, and we begin to see the singeing of our own hairs and really relate to the burning of our own flesh, and we begin to really see what the situation is due to our own experience, and we will someday. We will. If not now, then someday. Then at that time, we look at that door with such love and regard. In fact, we don't even think about how much we love and regard the door. We are so into the door that we are out of the door as soon as possible. We love the door. The door is our hope. It's like that when we approach the path. As we begin to practice turning the mind towards Dharma, we begin to practice seeing what is in this ocean of suffering, what we are surrounded with, then at that point, and begin to take in our own real experience and how how silly kind of it is when we try to keep on top of our own suffering when in fact we are suffering. And it is foolish to be in denial about that. At that point, our minds soften, they gentle, and they turn. And suddenly we get smart in a way we were never smart before. Suddenly we're on red alert. Something's different. And we begin to regard that door not as just a shape in a room, but as something that is more meaningful to us than anything else. The path is that door. Our teachers who give us the path is that door. They are that door. The method is that door. That is our opportunity to exit samsara. And so with great fervent regard, at that point we practice again and again and again, taking refuge in the Lama, who is considered to be the embodiment of all of the three refuges. As I taught the children, although the Buddha himself and his body that we remember as Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha, Shakyamuni, he is not present in his physical body as we understand it right now, but we look at the Lama as the embodiment of the qualities, intention, compassion, and activity of the Buddha in the world. Our lamas, those reincarnate lamas who are recognized as reincarnate lamas, are considered to be the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha. They are the Buddha in the world. So we look at the Lama as being that, the embodiment of the Buddha. We look at the Lama as being the embodiment of the Dharma, because if we were to try to study Dharma on our own, I can tell you the way that all the books in our bookstore are written, even though they are written with the commentary of a qualified Lama. When you read those books, you must also have the teachings, first of all, from the Guru that deepen and ripen the mind. Empowerment, lung, commentary teaching, the taking of vows, those teachings that deepen and ripen the mind, they can only be given by the Lama. Only be given by the Lama. And you must have them. You must have your mind ripened. A mind that is not ripe may delude itself into feeling spiritual and may even be able to speak spiritually. However, if it is not ripe, it cannot fulfill itself. And so we should consider like that. The Lama is considered to be the path. The Dharma is given to us by the Lama. The Lama connects us with the Dharma. Lama ripens us in the Dharma. The Lama is the Dharma in that sense. The Lama is also the Sangha, because without the Lama, there would be no Sangha. It is the Lama's qualities and compassion and activities that sound the note, that eventually calls the Sangha. Each one of the Sangha that has come to practice in some way, there is a personal and private circumstance that has called them, has pulled them in some secret inner way, particular and unique only to them. And their response is like a bell tolling somewhere deep in their minds, very unique, very individual, very present. That is the gathering of the Sangha, and it is done through the influence and compassionate activity of the Lama. See? So the Lama is the first object of refuge and the supreme object of refuge on the Vajrayana path. That is our view. We also take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. We consider that all of those are equal and they are all one, that they are inseparable. And I've explained to you why the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are important, but just to recapitulate very briefly, the Buddha, because only enlightened method and enlightened present can bring enlightened result, in the same way that apple seeds can bear apple fruit. Grape seeds cannot. You see? Enlightened seed will bring enlightened fruit. So, the Buddha. The Dharma, in that is the perfect vehicle, the vehicle that has proven itself to transport all sentient beings across the ocean of suffering. And the Sangha, because within the spiritual Sangha, once you enter into practice and come into a relationship, which you automatically do by taking vows with your Vajra brothers and sisters, at that point you have joined the Sangha. The Sangha becomes then a family. Talk to some of my students, and find out what it means to have a Sangha family. Those of my students who came to the path in a very general way, but then have experienced various sufferings, such as the suffering of grave illness, or life-threatening situations, or just terrible, suffering on some sort of emotional or mental level, have found that the support of the pure Sangha, which gathers around them at times like that, and supports them with practice and prayer and help and love and kindness, is absolutely essential, that without the Sangha, we would be incapable of keeping on. It would be so hard. It would be like a little sapling trying to survive in a hurricane. And the Sangha is rich with that kind of support and help. And furthermore, it is the Sangha's responsibility to propagate the Dharma. So the Sangha are considered to be an object of refuge, particularly those with robes, and particularly also those who have taken the Bodhisattva vow, because having taken the Bodhisattva vow, we can see that they intend to benefit us. And therefore we can rely on them for secure friendship and not betrayal. As in ordinary friendships, we often receive betrayal. So the Sangha becomes very precious, and that is the taking of refuge, the Lama, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And as for the Bodhisattva vow, it is said that when one receives the Bodhisattva vow, if one were to remain secure, absorbed, with the mind spacious and relaxed, absorbed mentally and emotionally and spiritually within the taking of the Bodhisattva vow, that is to say, extremely mindful, right there with it on a very deep level, appreciating and understanding and grieving for the suffering of sentient beings, as well as our own suffering, and seeing them as being non-dual, and longing to help. Looking at the suffering, I mean, you look at an AIDS march on TV, and you look at people dying, and you say to yourself, enough is enough. This is awful. This is unacceptable. You look at war, and you look at the bodies of children laying broken and bleeding in the street, and you say to yourself, this is enough. Enough, not acceptable. You look at hunger, you look at homelessness, you look at all of it, and you say, enough, enough. To remain absorbed in that, to understand that this is the fate of everyone who is in cyclic existence without the method. To remain absorbed in that, it is taught that in that moment of absorption, if one were to do it to give rise to such a depth of absorption that tears would come, then in that moment of absorption, you have removed 10,000 years at least, many thousands of years of gross karmic negative obscuration. Because for that 10,000 years, or however many lifetimes, we have been absorbed in ourselves, self-absorption. I am, I think, I feel, I will, I must, I need, I have to have, I'm like this. We still are like that, aren't we? We still do that. But that one moment of absorption in compassionate activity with pure intention serves to purify so much of that and gives us the method by which we can continue to remove all subtle and gross obscurations until we at last are free. And until we at last are able to return ennobled and finally capable of leading others toward Dharma and making for them the auspicious connection, so that their days of suffering, while perhaps not immediately over, it won't be like flip a switch and everybody's happy. No, I wish it was like that. But their suffering days, because of your absorption and compassion, are now numbered. Do you know that it is considered, there are many students, of course, who have a connection with me, and I will do my best. I will return life after life, not caring whether I'm tired, not caring anything. And this isn't just my idea. All the teachers, all the lamas, all the reincarnate lamas, those realized ones, will return without thought for themselves until the very last one of those sentient beings with whom they have a connection is finally liberated. And if they have to return even 100 lifetimes for that very last one, they will. I will. Now, if you take a similar vow, even if you can't fully practice it, even if it's just the first baby steps, there are those with whom you have a connection, and I don't have a connection, and neither do any of my teachers or any of the teachers who are able, but you have a connection to them simply through ordinary means. They were your mother in some previous life. Who knows, you could have been a cockroach. Some funny little corner in obscure reality where you have a connection with uncountable beings that no one with any realization has a connection with. You know what that means? You are their only hope and object of refuge. You are their only hope. So you must take this vow with complete absorption and think that you are taking it for their sake. For their sake. Because they are waiting for you, and the moment that you take this vow for the first time with complete absorption, and every time, therefore, that you continue to remind yourself and freshen that vow, their days of suffering are finally numbered. So at that point, the teachers all begin to nag a little bit, and they say, hurry, hurry, because they need you, and there's no one else. So you must hurry for the sake of sentient beings. You must. There are 3,000 myriads of universes, uncountable lives, connections that must be made, and you should pray every day of your life, whether I have a good or bad connection with every sentient being, let it bring them to Dharma. Let me find a way to be connected with all sentient beings, and let me never pass into nirvana until they are all free. This is our prayer as a bodhisattva.